We are grateful, our God, that words can shape and form our lives. May what we hear today be a part of what we can become tomorrow. For this we give thanks. Amen. Love is such a fickle word. In English, the word can cover so many things. It can be stretched so thin and often overused so much that it can become close to meaningless. And yet it is the most important word we have to describe our relationships and almost everything that we value in this world and beyond. Whether it's between partners, children, families, mothers, fathers, strangers even, and the earth itself, and our relationship with God is expressed in love. The Gospels are not shy in using this word. It's spoken on the lips of Jesus in Aramaic. He uses the word shav, which is the word love. In Hebrew, rakham, the word for love. And of course we know the many words that are used in the New Testament to describe what it means to love, that relationship which pours out of ourselves or comes into our lives from other people and from the world around us. By the time the New Testament text was actually written, love is translated, of course, into Greek, the language of the New Testament. And most often people will know some of the words that I will use, agape, or eros, or philia, and a word that's not used, only used once in the New Testament, storge. The four words mean love, but they mean different aspects of love. Whereas we, in our English language, of course, tend to use love as one word and use one experience. So here in the passage that Craig just read, we hear the Apostle Paul employing the most powerful word in our lexicon, love. It's so powerful, so dominant, and so prevailing that it is the source, the motivation, and the destination of our lives as Christians. However, it can also be used wrongly and also, of course, misunderstood. Owe no one anything except love one another, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law, writes Paul. Now, it can be used wrongly, we know. Let me use a very silly illustration. Now, if a police officer pulls you up for breaking COVID regulations, don't try saying, "Oh, I don't follow the law. It doesn't apply to me because I love everyone." Sorry, you can't get away with that, no matter what you try. Because love does not obliterate law, but rather it becomes that which goes over the top and underneath the law. Love is not a technique. It's not a way of getting my own way. It's not a formula. It's a way of life, a way of being in the world. In fact, it's the very source of life. It is the beginning and the end of life. Love can shape and form our relationships, our behaviour, and even the everyday activities that we do. It doesn't have to be grandiose or great. Rather, it is that which forms us and shapes us. But it arises in us, not by our willpower, I will love this person, or by our determination to love. Rather, it permeates our lives through the grace and the giftedness of God. Our role is to be open to allow that love to flow within us. Now, it may be a gift from God, but we won't always be loving. Of course not. That's why we practice forgiveness, the ability to be reconciled with those we have wronged when we have been less loving. Some may be old enough to remember the film Love Story with the actors Ryan O'Neill and Ali McGraw. The film ends with the main character saying, "Love means never having to say you're sorry." Some years after the film, Ryan O'Neill was interviewed and he said, "The silliest line I ever said in a film was, 'Love means never having to say you're sorry.' If love is anything, it always means having to say you're sorry." Of course it is, because we fail and we mistakenly do things that are not necessarily loving, and the way in which we mend the relationships with one another and the relationship with God and with the world around us is by saying, "May we be forgiven. I'm sorry." The point that Paul is making here is that love is not only an emotion or a sentiment or a feeling. It is those things. There is that sense in love. It manifests itself in many ways and at many different times. But at its very essence, it is the ground of our being. It is where we begin and where we end and where we live in between. There is no stronger foundation to life than love. In this reading from Paul's letter to the community at Rome, he seems to be saying, of course there are commandments. We all know that. Don't be unfaithful to those who are close to you. Certainly don't murder anyone, nor steal, nor covet that which others have, and all of the other commandments, all the other laws. But they are summed up in the very simple words, love your neighbour as yourself. Echoes of words that we've heard in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Gospels, loving your neighbour as yourself. I recall a conversation I had with a woman some years ago. She told me that her and her husband had lived in 4 houses in 20 years. And you know what she said? We've had bad neighbours at every place. I thought, perhaps she lacks a little bit of personal insight. But this passage and the words of Jesus here are not necessarily, of course, referring to the people who live next to you. In fact, the reference is to those you probably don't even know. Our neighbour is not necessarily a friend. Our neighbour can be a stranger. And of course we saw that in the life of Jesus. Who was his neighbour? The Samaritan, the person who was not a part of his culture or his life. The woman at the well, who was not a part of his social grouping, like the tax collectors, or like those who are at the bottom of the social rung. If we want to fulfill the law of love, we must find a way to connect with those who are unlike us. That means showing compassion to those who've come from somewhere else, who don't speak the same language, who don't practice the same religion. Perhaps it means showing love to the refugee or to those who are fleeing persecution. Not an easy thing to do, because their lives and their experience of life can be so different from our own. How do we show empathy toward the homeless, towards the man who sits right next to the place where I go to get my shopping? How do I express love in that way? Is it to drop a $2 coin into the hat? Or is it to actually have a conversation with him, find out his name and ask, how are you doing today? Maybe that is an expression of love which goes beyond just the normal way in which we are. How do we express kindness to those who are not like me? Maybe people who practice Islam, or Hindus, or Buddhists, or atheists, or humanists, or someone who isn't necessarily part of the Christian commune. That's what love is. It transgresses our normal way of being in the world. It means that we treat others the way we would like to be treated. We can fully understand the inner world. We cannot fully understand the inner world of others. And particularly, we can't understand the inner world of the stranger. But we have some idea of our own inner world, and that which can lead us beyond ourselves. And with courage, when we encounter the otherness that is experienced in the neighbour, the stranger, we can have empathy. We can find a reflection of ourself in the other person. The Irish philosopher Richard Carney, in his book Anatheism, says these words: if we possess a kind of narrative sympathy, he means by that listening to the stories of others. If we possess this sympathy, this will enable us to see the world from another's point of view. If we do not have this sympathy and willingness to listen to their story, then we cannot love. Love means listening to what others would say, because my desire is to be listened to, and the space in between, that is the space of love. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. Love is not naive. The stranger does not always return the love with love. The word hospitality, which is an important word in drawing the stranger into my world, the word hospitality is closely related to the word hostile. So when we do show love to the stranger, to the neighbour, we need wisdom, we need discernment, and they are essential acts in the act of love and compassion. But don't be so cautious to fear the stranger or to close the door of hospitality. This will often truncate our own spiritual growth, and it will isolate us from our neighbour and from our friend and also from the stranger. It was the Islamic poet Rumi who said, "Our task is not so much to seek love, but merely to seek and find all of the barriers within ourselves that we have built against love." Love does not exist in a vacuum. It's not just a word or an unattainable virtue. It is the stuff of life, the everyday life. It is not only out there, but love is also within us. The barriers within us inhibit us from loving others. And it can damage the relationships that we have with neighbour, friend, stranger, and a myriad of other places. It can harm me if I'm unable to express the love that I would like to be loved, and I express that love to others. Love is the beginning, it is the end, and it is everything in between, the life in which we live. Amen.